Neptune's ocean, wash this blood clean from my hands. No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one roar. Step 1. What's he literally saying? You tell the person next to you, what is he literally, paraphrase that, what is he literally saying?
He said that his water will never be a man or his hand is
Yeah.
So he's gonna wash his hands from the evidence, but when he does that, like, his environment is gonna know something, because it says here, like, the sea is gonna turn red. So it's saying that everything around is gonna be like tainted.
Armando, what's Macbeth literally saying?
That was the water, literally like take out, like remove the blood from his hands.
Will the water literally remove the blood from his hands? Perfect. Now let's go deeper, because there's a lot of stuff going deeper here. Do you want to start us off?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll take it deeper.
I thought what it meant is like it will, even though although like he took the blood off his hands, he won't still take that guilt of committing that murder. It would always be there.
Saying that to wash in Neptune's ocean, like the ocean is big and you can literally wash your hands in there, but the blood is still gonna be there circling around. You just won't be able to see it as much, but it's still there. Like his guilt is still gonna be there no matter how many times he washes his hands.
That was really smart. She took Armando's idea and she built off of it, and she implicitly referred to a literary element. Well, there's an illusion, but more to do with that. She said no matter how many times he washes his hands in the ocean, which
Hyperbole?
there we go. Thank you. It's a hyperbole, right? Why does he use this hyperbole? Well, Gabby just told us. Why does he use this hyperbole of the ocean needing to wash away his guilt?
Because technically he can wash his hands and get the blood out of him, but the guilt is still going to be there, and the stain of the blood is going to be there, that he still has like the king's blood in his hands.
That's really smart. So here's my next question for you. So we've got this hyperbole under control. Now I want you to know why the illusion. What is the illusion? Who's Neptune?
The
God of the sea. The Greek mythology, they called him
Poseidon.
Poseidon. Okay, same guy. I want you to talk to your table. Why reference Neptune? Why is it Neptune's ocean? Why is it not Scotland's ocean? Okay, go, talk. Why?
What do you think, Nelly? Why the illusion? Okay, so what do we know about
Neptune is like the king. There's the three kings, right? Poseidon and right. The Griffin, like the other one. So then, the fact that he's like referencing one of the greatest gods. That's sexy. So they'll have like their own purposes. Yeah. She wants to have the power to do whatever they want to see. So he can have the power to.
So that's really smart, and it has to do with what we've been talking about this whole week, which is agency.
It removes agency from Macbeth, because saying, I'm not saying I'm gonna wash my hands. It's actually saying that the gods need to wash like this guilt away from me, because I'm incapable of doing it myself.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, so I'm actually going to have Jeffrey share what he just shared with me, and then whoever wants to jump on, go ahead. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Basically, what we were talking about like this 3 week about agency, and when Macbeth says, that he requires like the Neptune to wash the blood from his hands with all his ocean, it shows that Macbeth has like lacking agency, because he can't do it himself. He's incapable to wash away his own guilt, so he needs to call upon the gods to do it for him.
It's a very powerful god of the sea to do it for him. That was well said. Who wants to add to that? Okay, Shayla has a smart idea, and then we're going to hear from Amy. Share it loudly and clearly, Shayla.
Well, since Neptune is the god of the ocean, like he can control anything that has to do with water, we figured that
himself from his country, perhaps, to remove that guilt. That's really smart thought. Let's take it further. To what part of his body is he referring? Part for the whole, part for the whole. Synecdoche. Why hand? That's what committed the murder. That's the dagger. But why not? You know, he probably splashed some blood on his arm and his chest and his pants and whatever they wear at 1040 in Scotland. So I want you to think about this, and I want you to tell the people next to you, why is Shakespeare using the synecdoche, a hand, in this minor little scene?
I feel like whenever you kill someone, like I feel like most of the blood is gonna get at what you try and kill. So if you do this, obviously on the blood is gonna get here and then everywhere else. But the fact that it's mostly on your hand is sort of like a constant reminder always feeling guilty.
So we're using parts of the body. It's not all of it, but for some part of
grabbing stuff, grabbing a dagger, stabbing the king. I think that's why it's wash my hands. In a way, saying the gangs are the ones that are guilty of doing this, and
he was perfectly satisfied with how he had.
Yeah, he was not in control, so it was a sense he just went for it. And the sense are
Power hungry,
the ones that are
lust for power, and then, she planted this seed of
Yeah, and
lust
in
within
ways
him,
that's actually true
his
because
ambition,
the one
and he
who
caused,
actually was
and
controlling
he was aware of her actions, so
it was sort of her,
he didn't really want to do it. That's why he had to think about it.
He himself
Therefore, it wasn't all of him that was guilty, it was only a part of him that was guilty.
sort of let his mind blink and just allow him to kill him.
So it seems like a lot of us have really solid conclusions about the synecdoche here. Julie, you're nodding your head. You want to start us off?
We were thinking that it wasn't necessarily him that had the power to control his hands. It was more like the hands had a mind of themselves, and therefore they were the ones that killed him.
Which is a question of agency. Good. Who wants to add to this? No, this is smart. Okay. So now I want to take us down another level. We're gonna start with Armando.
When I saw this, is he blaming his hands? The way I saw it, he's blaming his hands, not himself, and going back to biblical text. I forget who, I think it was Jesus. He tells someone, it's if you feel that your hands are making you commit a sin, cut it off, or get rid of it. So that's how I saw this certain part that he's not blaming himself, he's blaming his hands for his actions. So I think that might be a reason.
There's this quote from this absurdist existential play, Waiting for Godot, where one of the characters says, "That's man for you, blaming on his boots the fault of his feet, blaming on his hands the fault of his body." Go ahead.
Could it also be that, I'm thinking if I were in his shoes, I would just try to ease my insanity by saying, it wasn't me that did it. It's not possibly my fault. It's the fault of my hands. These are guilty hands, not me.
Right, and why would he do that? These are guilty hands, not me. Yeah.
He's almost trying to pin the guilt away from him. He's trying to pin the guilt on anything that's not him, pretty much. What I interpreted synecdoche as the blame being on Lady Macbeth, because she planted the seed for lust of power within him, and he had, before that, he was thinking about it, whether or not to kill Duncan. Because I believe that he was satisfied with the amount of power he had, being Thane and Cardor and such, but the ambition that Lady Macbeth planted in him almost drove him to do something he really didn't want to do, because then the synecdoche, only part of him wanted to do it, not all of him. So trying to remove the guilt away from him, more towards Lady Macbeth.
I'm going to take us down one more level, or maybe two. Yes. Every time I see a reference to washing of my hands, I am supposed to think of
Jesus.
closer, but we're talking about hands, not feet. You seem to know the answer.
Not
It's
sure.
a very famous scene in the Bible where someone washes their hands. tell me more. When and where and why does he wash his hands?
He doesn't believe that Jesus is guilty enough to be crucified, but the other judges or the other people in the court do. So he washes his hands, saying like, if something happens, it wasn't me and I didn't take the decision. It was like y'all. And that's why he washes his hands to show he's not guilty of anything that happens to Jesus.
Pontius Pilate washes his hands to show that he's not guilty of anything that happens to Jesus, even if he actually is. Shakespeare's audience, would they be familiar with that allusion to the washing of the hands? Was his audience predominantly Christian? Yes, so they would be familiar with that. So, is Macbeth theoretically some sort of Christian? In a way, at least historically. Okay, so why though does he then reference the washing of the hands and attribute it to whom does he attribute the washing of the hands? Neptune, rather than God. Talk about that. Whoa.
The fact that he doesn't like God
Or
Since he already committed a really bad murder, which is considered like a sin. So like he basically lost that connection with God. So he's trying to like go into like other gods, right?
can't even think next options.
The Bible says he created the universe, he created mankind, and that's like a higher God. And like once that God is like if you do like you do something bad and you go to your parents, like it doesn't matter, they're not gonna listen to you, right? Because there's a higher power that's gonna be disappointed in you. But if you go to a God that controls one certain thing and like wash the sin by my hand,
and those two, someone who sins
it's like
that is to God. And Macbeth almost like he has committed a sin, so he knows that he himself is dead to God, and therefore he must be guilty of someone else higher power than God.
you know what I'm saying? Every night go to that. So it's the same thing, but it's
So going off that,
exactly. It's like he can't talk to God because maybe it's page.
the father of the
So there you go. Smart. Okay, so there's some really amazing connections going on. Neza just connected to the fact that on the previous page he couldn't even say amen, so of course he can't talk to God. We talked about how Gabby mentioned that how after he commits his sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, Adam hides himself from God. Maybe this is a similar situation of hiding himself from God. There's some amazing, amazing thoughts. I want to point out one more thing and then I want to recap. He talks about how he's going to make the seas incarnadine, and I look at the footnote, and that means blood red. He's going to make the seas blood red. Does that happen in the Bible ever?
Yes.
Yes, it does. When did the seas, when did they turn blood red in the Bible? Armageddon. And also, Moses and the parting of the seas, right? And then Revelations, coming of Christ, we're all going to be judged. Okay, so he is making the seas blood red, not with the coming of Christ in the second coming, but instead in his guilt of murder. Okay, so we're perverting Christianity here. And then of course he's going to make the green sea red, and I might want to think about the connotations of green. I think of green, I think of
Envy.
wealth and envy and nature, and he's taking all of these things and putting them together and making them red. Okay, so we just talked about illusion, Greek illusion, biblical illusion, synecdoche, symbols, imagery. Am I missing anything? Hyperbole, agency. And how many lines did we just study? Like 2? 4 lines. Sing it. Oh my gosh. 4 lines. I want you to turn to the person next to you and tell them what my point has been. What's my point?
All the red about this 4 lines. And then we should have taken notes because we were having a 10 brainstorm.